All right, everybody. Good evening. Kevin Crouch here with South Metro Weather. We're going to start this thing off a little bit differently than we usually do. We're going to start out here in the forecast lab. So this is just going to be me sitting here. It's a little easier for me to navigate all the different things I'm going to show you sitting at the computer, and then we'll kind of shift things off a little bit later. But for now, I want to show you the temperatures around the area right now. We're in the mid to low 60s, and we won't cool down that much overnight. There's more moisture in the air, so that's going to let us hold in most of this daytime heating that we've got now. We will start warming up tomorrow morning back into right around 60 degrees or so before this cold front comes in. Now, I will say this front has been trending earlier and earlier and earlier, and we'll show you that here in a second. It's just been earlier and earlier, and so that's kind of been an interesting trend, and hopefully this is not going to be a situation like I've had in the past, where there was one time where a front was a few hours early and completely caught me by surprise. So we're going to be showing a lot of models and that kind of thing. 0Z just started running, so let's get back over to the 23Z. This is the HR model. So I want to show you, first of all, the timing of the front tomorrow. And we were initially, when we were looking at this front, it looked like kind of a later in the day front. So I was thinking we were going to go, closer to the 70s in the evening time, afternoon and evening, when we hit peak heating rather. But it looks like tomorrow morning, we're getting to, you can see 6 a.m. It's already kind of in our northwestern fringes here. And then by the time we get to, that's 8 a.m. already moving through the Metroplex, already moving into Johnson County. And then you get to 9 a.m., bisecting our area. By 10 a.m., mostly through the area. And by 11 a.m., by lunch, certainly, it's all the way through. So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at here. And really, we're going to be cold and gusty most of the day. And if we look at this, once the front moves through, we're already in the 40s. We'll spend most of the day tomorrow in the 40s. By tomorrow night, by the time we're getting into late Sunday night, early Monday morning, we'll be in the 20s. And so it's going to be quite chilly, quite chilly. It's going to be cold, just straight up, straightforward, no games about it, cold tomorrow. And so what I'll tell you, for one, when you go to church tomorrow, don't be fooled if you're going to an earlier service that it's a little bit warm and muggy. The other thing I want to show you too, let me go back a few frames, is that it will be much less humid tomorrow. So check this out. We have dew points in the 40s, or really the 50s and 60s here. Let's see. Yeah, so 60s, 50s there. So that is fairly humid. We're right around 60 degrees in terms of our dew point right now. That's on the humid side. And then tomorrow, with that front moving through, it's just gonna be nuts. So there you can clearly see the front there, very dry air moving in with it. Now, that will factor into the other part of the conversation we have to talk about, which is the possibility of some of that wintry precipitation. Now, I will also mention here the possibility of some showers. So here's the thing. This really looks like mostly a dry front for our area. It does not look like we're going to be getting much rain at all. So this is 7 a.m. This is the HR model, like I mentioned. And the NAM model has been these are the two kind of short-term models that we have, short range. And the NAM model's been pretty consistent on this. So here's 7 a.m., 6 a.m., 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you remember last Saturday, running up to that, before that, I told you that we were expecting to get showers and a few thunderstorms developing in our area and then scooting on east fairly quickly. Looks like that's the setup here. Now, the difference then was that we got tons of rain early in the morning, very early start. And so, it was definitely different than what I expected. Now, here's the thing. The signs were there. I was skeptical of them. I was incorrectly skeptical of them. The signs were there that we could be looking at an earlier event with more rain for our area. I think I bumped up, the chance of rain a degree or two, but or a percentage or two, but Not a big change there. Definitely not to accommodate what ended up happening. The good thing with this one is that we're not seeing that indication. We're not seeing the Storm Prediction Center start scooting the severe risk, farther west. There is a severe risk for southeast Texas over into Louisiana. We haven't seen them bumping that westward like we did the last one. So it does look like this will be a dry front for our area. Again, I think that this is about right. 8 a.m. there, looking at just kind of a few little showers maybe popping up. And then as it gets southeast of us, of course, as we start warming up as well, that's where we'll start to see more thunderstorms popping up and that sort of thing. Now, when the front moves through in the morning, it is my plan to go out. You've seen me do this before. I'm not going to pull the camera out because we saw how well that went last time. So I've kind of grounded myself from doing that. But I will be out somewhere in Waxahachie to feel this front come in. And so I was thinking about locations today, and I was looking at the Civic Center in Waxahachie. Great spot. It's got a clear kind of view to the north, so we'll feel that north wind coming in. So tomorrow morning, if I go out there to meet the front, to feel that come through, I will let you know if I decide to do that. And that way, if you want to come out and join me and we can kind of experience that together, we can do that. So I'll put that word out tomorrow, and maybe we can have a little bit of a kind of an open air weather experience together. That's kind of a tradition for me. That first big cold blast of the season, I want to be out there. I want to be out there. I want to feel it. I want to experience it because it's awesome. It really, really is awesome. I mean, we experience it all the time, but when you're out there and you're actually tuned in with it, it's great. It's really, really neat. So we will work on getting that information to you now. So that is the cold front tomorrow. Here's the thing. If you're hearing about a big winter storm happening across the country with the front, this is what we're talking about here. So this is the HR model. This is, again, 10 o'clock in the morning. This is what we're talking about. I think there's been some confusion with the messaging because I've heard people say, when they were talking about the potential for wintry precipitation and things, there were people talking about, oh, yeah, I hear there's this Arctic front coming in. And so it's kind of been, I think, most of the time you think about this coming with the front, right? The thing is, we're not going to get any kind of precipitation with the front here because all of the cold air is up to the north. So it's going to be pulling the moisture up, but then you would have to be back here, in terms of, behind the low. Janelyn Fallen, you're asking about the pipes or about the outdoor faucets. If they're covered, they shouldn't freeze. So, especially because we're not looking at really severe cold temperatures. It'll get dang cold, but, we're not looking at, temperatures in teens or anything like that. So if your outdoor faucets are covered, you shouldn't have a problem. This is not cold enough to overcome those. So, but you see, this is where the coldest air is going to be on the front end of this whole thing, this storm system that's going through. And so, and part of this is that you can see where the warm air is, and you can see north of that where that's going to be. But that will be the first part of this whole storm. This is where all the winter weather is going to be tomorrow, and going forward into Monday. For our part, we'll kind of transition into step 2 of this. So just as a recap, expect the front tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 a.m. That'll be, and it's actually I'm not sure exactly how quickly it's going to be. The models have been moving like 30 miles per hour, really making a clip. So this thing is going to run in, it's going to kick the door in, and you will feel it. This is a front that wants your attention, and it will get it. So let's kind of shift into what everybody really wants to talk about here. Let's talk about some winter weather and what to expect there. Now, what I'm going into is, this is pivotal weather. This is when you see all of these model screenshots posted on Facebook, at least, most of those, the white ones like this, that's pivotal weather. And here you can spend, a few bucks a month and get these accessible to you. This is some of the trouble with some of the misinformation that goes around social media, because this is available to anybody. But the thing is, it takes learning the models, it takes knowing them, that kind of thing. And so it's, it's really helpful to know to look at the big picture, to know kind of sometimes the weird little things that these models do. And so kind of their little, weird little antics. So let me stop dragging things around and show you a few models here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this. Let's see. Oh, I need to log in. No, I don't. Why? Oh, that's CFS. I don't want to do that. Ugh, I hate the CFS. Okay, so let me get this down to our location. So it'll show Central Time. To make it easier for everybody. So this is the GFS model. Now, as we've gone through this lovely journey where people have been showing just chaos on their page, and there's some where they'll show one frame of one model at one point in time, and they're doing this every 6 hours, right? And they're showing, basically they're making it to where, okay, the model says this, so this is my new forecast. But it's every 6 hours, and it changes dramatically. I mean, we've seen some models, some runs of the GFS, the American model, where there's nothing. It's well, actually, there was, if I remember correctly, there was one, like a 1 a.m. run that was, yes, drip the faucets, for sure. Yeah, so, I mean, you've got these a screenshot of a 1 a.m. run of the GFS that had tons of snow. The 7 a.m. had barely anything at all. And then the 1 p.m. had a ton of snow again. So it's just like they're changing their forecast with every one. And by the way, if you ever look at your weather apps and can't figure out why the forecast seems to be changing constantly, it's because you have multiple models. Some update every hour, some every 3 hours, every 6 hours, whatever. So they're just changing based on what the last model said half the time. So that's why they're not very accurate sometimes, because they're not looking at the big picture. That's what you have to do. You have to look at the big picture. You have to look at the trends, right? Because it's statistics. So this is what I always say on this platform. It's like statistics. You have an outlier, right? You can look at one model and go, okay, that's so different from all the other runs. Clearly it's trash. It's garbage. Shouldn't be taken seriously. But the problem is these people don't do that. They're just going off of the last thing they saw and making it a big dramatic Facebook post. Troy Ross talking about a YouTube channel that has a misleading thumbnail. Yeah, and that's the thing, that's the game on YouTube, is your thumbnails. When I pick a thumbnail, 90% of the, in fact 100% of the time, when I pick a thumbnail for my forecast videos, it's always a frame from the forecast video. Now, I may pick the one that looks the most visually appealing, just because that's what you have to do, but I don't put misleading thumbnails up there. I'm not going to put some map with, with crazy stuff. If it's something I'm going to put on a thumbnail, it's something that I have in the video that I'm going to explain. So at least if you click on my video, you'll go, oh, that's what that means. Instead of like, I know the Max Velocity guy, I know Ryan Hall. There's a lot of these channels, and it's not just them two, it's a lot of them, that they have these. They'll put a map that's not even a meteorological map or anything, but it has a big blue area and it'll say OMG or watch this or get ready or something like that, and a big arrow pointing to wherever. That's common. I think Ryan Hall started that, and they all basically saw that he was successful and copied it. So that's really common, really thing. So Katie Best, Kevin, if you can make it snow ice like 2021 again this week, us teachers would appreciate it. I'm sure you would, but the families that lost family members and friends in Winter Storm Uri probably wouldn't. I know our state infrastructure would not enjoy that. So fortunately, we're not looking at a February 2021 type freeze. This is not even close. So here's the GFS model, and if we look at the precipitation type and rate, number one, I think that don't get too distracted with this. This is 9 a.m. tomorrow. I think that's a little heavy-handed on the rain, but it's also a big picture, thing. So this level, I just wouldn't take it too seriously. But here we go. So let's get into, first of all, we were looking at the possibility of some mix on the 8th on Wednesday. And right now this model does have a little bit of something happening on the 8th, but then it really starts on the 9th. So it looks like right now the 9th and 10th are the biggest, opportunities. So I'm not too worried about when I'll be watching Wednesday. We may have to throw like a light, potential there, like a 20% in there, just to cover some possible stuff that might fall. But here's the thing. Any day that there's just these itty bitty looks at the possibility of some snow, whatever here, when it's showing just little specks like this, I'm not going to take that very seriously because there's so much dry air. I showed you just a minute ago. The dew points are so low that any of that moisture is going to have to fight that dry air. So I'm not too worried about that. But obviously here you get into morning on Thursday, and that's where you can see some changes happening. Now, you see this red line, this red dotted line, that is the freezing line. So I think that's a little far north. And again, that freezing line is a tough call. So, I wouldn't look at something like the GFS model, which is such a big picture model. It's not necessarily great for really, really local stuff like this. I would be cautious to take that too terribly seriously. Let's see. What do you expect the winds to be? We're traveling 45 north, back home from 2 hours south. I mean, it's going to be windy. I mean, we can have winds of 10 to 20 miles per hour, gusting to 30 miles per hour or so, going forward from the north once this thing is behind us. So that's very possible. But I mean, you can see that it's, where that freezing line is, obviously south of that's mostly going to be rain. And so really that freezing line will lift northward during the day. And I don't see that really happening here, which is kind of odd. So I don't really pay too much attention to that red dotted line. I don't really like how it's acting here. But when it warms up during the day, we'll get above freezing pretty much everywhere because we'll be in the low 40s, at least for our particular area. So what kind of precipitation we get is going to largely depend on what time it is. So, I mean, this is 3 p.m. This will be around when we're probably at our warmest. Then we get to 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and you can see the blue getting a little further south. That's when we'll be dropping below freezing, right? So this is midnight. And then this is getting into Friday. And the GFS has us pretty dry on Friday. And so, but I think that if we get over to the Euro, let's get over to the Euro model, that latest run. And again, showing some showers. And you can see here for tomorrow, east and southeast of us, obviously, heavier coverage there. I may have been wrong about that red dotted line. I think that was a coincidence. I don't think that was actually showing a freezing line. So here we go. So this is Thursday morning. Most of that moisture comes in. And you can see the purples and the orange and the pink and stuff, that's all kind of a mix. And so the blue is the snow, the straight snow. And we'll talk about, precipitation modalities here in a moment. And by the way, I keep neglecting this, but thank you, Philip Pearson, for the Venmo donation. Greatly appreciated there. Thank you so much. But yeah, as we go forward, this is the Euro model. So this has a little bit more really drying out on Friday. So that's interesting. Let me see. I may have to adjust my forecast here. Let me do that on the other screen here. You know what? That's interesting because I was so sure I saw earlier a better chance of, so let's do this. I'm going to make an adjustment here. And honestly, Friday may be more morning. So, hang on a second, folks. I'm pulling an audible here with my Battlefield background there. History nerd, what can I tell you? So Thursday is primarily going to be our rain day. And I'll just kind of leave this here for, come on, leave it there. So that's 9 p.m. Thursday. So here's what I want to say about evening time precipitation here. I am fairly concerned about Friday morning when it comes to the possibility of some wintry, precipitation affecting travel. Thursday night, Friday morning. I think if there's going to be a time where we could potentially hit some issues, it's probably going to be then. Because, and here's the kind of the pro and con. The pro of that is any moisture that we get. So if we have rain going on, and this is 9 p.m. So earlier in the day when we're above freezing, if we have rain falling, then that just wets the ground. And in turn, that, could very well turn into ice overnight. The good news is that the temperatures look to be trending maybe a little bit, I would say a little bit, but they are appearing to trend a little warmer Thursday night into Friday. It's still below freezing, but it may be more of a bridges, overpasses kind of thing instead of, looking at roads freezing. So I wouldn't be shocked if there were some travel impacts Friday morning, especially depending on how much liquid precipitation we get on Thursday and how much, of whatever falls does stay on the roads. But we'll kind of have to wait and see what Friday morning looks like. That might be a tough call. But regardless, I think that will be most of that. And I think that we could have some slick roads on Thursday, especially in the morning and the evening when we are freezing. Some of that freezing precipitation sometimes, even if it's not frozen over the road, some of that sleet and things can cause a little bit of an issue. But I don't see anything too major, at least right up front. Let me get some questions here. Joshua, will I be able to get any Whataburger in Ellis County? So I hope so, because I love Whataburger myself. So, back in 2011, when that big winter storm hit, I was living in Arlington, going to school at UTA, and my roommate and I finally got so tired of dealing with, the food that we had at the house. It was just we were eating the same thing every day. We didn't prepare very well. And there was a Whataburger just about a mile down the road, if that. And so we said, you know what, we're sick of this. We're going to go and we're going to try to get our Whataburger. Now, I was turning on to, what's that, Collins, I think? Onto Collins, and I made the turn, and then I just kind of kept going. And eventually I stopped, and I just kind of slowly, we made it. But yeah, no, it was a little bit scary. It was terrifying in slow motion, weirdly enough. But we got there. We did our thing. How do you feel the driving conditions will be Thursday and Friday? So yeah, Brittany, that was answering that question. I do think that we will probably be looking at some issues Friday morning. Again, it could be just, bridges and overpasses and that kind of thing. But I would be prepared for maybe some issues Friday morning. Don't know if it's going to be enough to close schools, but at least might be enough to cause some headaches on Friday morning. And so that's the Euro model. Just to show some consensus here, the Canadian model now, let me see if I can get this. We can get it close, not here necessarily, but the Canadian model, that latest run of that, there's the showers for tomorrow. And then getting into it, yeah, pretty clear consistency there too. That's 12Z on what? That's about 7 o'clock. No, this is, yeah, so that's Friday. That's Friday morning, 7 a.m. Friday morning. So the Canadian model is the one that's kind of pushing everything a little later, because this is, where'd it go? Okay, this is 7 o'clock Thursday night. And you see the timing here? This is Zulu time. This is like the GMT. This is universal, Zulu time. Have to back that up a few hours. So this is 7 p.m. on Thursday night. And so this pushes it all to Friday, interestingly enough. So, there is that. But it still shows quite a bit of moisture, frozen stuff, happening over us. And so, the UK model, as well. I think it goes out that far. Yeah. So if anything, the UK model at this point is one of the more reserved. So this has the British model, the UK model has everything staying pretty well south of us. It shows a little bit maybe north and west of our area, but the vast majority of the moisture stays well south of us, way down on the coast and in the hill country. So there are still some models that say, hey, nothing happening. So it's not necessarily that, everything is decided here. There's still some that are kind of thinking, yeah, I don't know. But I was talking about statistics here in a second, and we are definitely looking at those that are saying it won't do anything are kind of more in the outlier, range. So let's get over to, we talked about these ensembles too, and let's see, this one I got to pull up something a little different. Total snowfall, we'll just go with that. Now, this is the European ensemble, so this is taking a bigger picture approach. Now, this is showing like 3 inches, between 2 and 3 inches of snow for our area through, well, the 19th. That's going way far out. So let's just focus on by the end of the 10th. Still though, 2 to 3 inches. I don't know if I buy that. I think that this model is a little heavy-handed with that. Now, there's also, talking about freezing rain and has a little bit of that. So I don't know if I buy what this model is showing in terms of the total snowfall. And I know that there's some pages that are sharing that too. So I'm just not too terribly concerned with getting, 2 or 3 inches of snow. I think that might be a little bit ambitious. Again, it's going to be very, very dry. So any of this moisture is going to have to fight against any of that moisture to really make anything happen. So if you see anybody sharing, let me get back to that total snow fall. If you see anybody sharing this, I mean, there's people that are sharing like models showing 6 inches of snow. Good Lord, y'all, come on. I don't think there's anything to that at all. I would be surprised if we, got much more than an inch or so. Maybe, even that's. I feel weird even saying that. Yeah. So I'm skeptical on this one. I tend to be skeptical anyway of winter weather events just because of how finicky they can be. But when it comes down to it, I think we will see some wintry precipitation. I think that a lot of it will depend on when do we get the bulk of the moisture. If we get more rain on Thursday than frozen precipitation, I think that night, the good news is, again, there will be moisture around, so that will help us not cool down as much. So if we don't get farther into the 20s, then that will help us to avoid some of those traffic issues. But at the same time, that will give a better opportunity to maybe get some frozen services on those bridges and overpasses and that kind of thing. But yes, there's been several questions about that. Several people will, you will want to cover your outdoor faucets and those kind of things. Take those precautions now. So I want to shift gears here a little bit and actually talk about, for one, what we can expect for what kind of precipitation we're going to get, and kind of explain this a little bit, and then we'll get into the forecast. So this is something that I talk about in my classes all the time when I go to the schools, and we kind of talk about how you make different kinds of precipitation. And this also kind of helps to cover why is it so hard to get snow in Texas. So for the most part, number one, any rain that we get generally starts as ice crystals way up in the sky. It's cold up there, it's below freezing. So what happens is below that, you have rain because it's above 32 degrees the majority of the time. And so when you're above 32 degrees from the cloud, from very high up in the air down to the ground, you get rain. Now, you have a cold front, and that cold air moves below the warm air. It goes generally along the ground and kind of pushes the warm air up. This is really where we get most of our issues. So you have snow here, it goes through the warm air and melts, but then it gets between here and the ground. it starts to kind of get really, really cold. And sometimes it can be in this weird state between being liquid and ice, and sometimes it's still liquid, but then it hits the ground that's so cold that it freezes. This is the kind of thing that causes most of our traffic problems because it's liquid enough to spread out, and it's like people show the glazed donut comparison, because you get that glaze, it covers the donut, and then it hardens. So that's essentially the same thing here. And, that's what covers your vehicles and your mailboxes and those kind of things. And if it is cold enough, can cover your roads. Now you get even further and you have the snow at the upper levels, but you still have a little bit of that warm air left. And so what happens is it melts, so you no longer have that pristine snowflake, but then you're still getting below freezing high enough above the ground that it has time to freeze. And so that's when you get your sleet, kind of your mix, that sort of thing. That's probably some of what we will see. So we'll see that melt in the mid-levels of the air, and then getting closer to the ground, it freezes again. And that's when you get your grapple, your sleet pellets, that sort of thing. If you completely get rid of all that warm air, that is when you have snow, because you have below freezing temperatures all the way from the cloud to the ground. Obviously going to be easier to do that overnight, and so that's one reason the mode of precipitation may depend greatly on what time all of this is falling. And so this is kind of part of what we're going to be looking at. Now, I have been proven wrong on occasion, not necessarily wrong, but there's always an exception to the rule, especially when you're in Texas and the weather doesn't make any sense, that we have had this warm layer of air, albeit a thin one, that we still had snow that punched through that warm air and was able to maintain itself. If you remember when we had that kind of elongated rice-looking snow, that's what happened. We still had that layer of warm air, and we could tell that with weather balloons and data from airplanes, that kind of thing. And so the fact that it's going through the warm air, we would think, well, it would melt and that it would no longer be snow. Well, it was cold enough, and the warm air was modest and thin enough that it went through, and it was still technically snow by the time it reached the ground. But I think we will see a mix of everything, and I think, honestly, that the travel impacts probably won't be that great. Honestly, it doesn't look like we have the makings of a major event here. Now, we have seen these events change within 24 hours. So the thing is that winter weather, the variables that you have are so finicky and so sensitive sometimes that the smallest change is really all that you need. Let me grab this here, is really all that you need to make a big difference. So, I mean, again, we could be in a situation where this could change dramatically as we get closer to that event, but I mean, we will have to wait and see. Oh, well, no, I need you to change that. That's not what I wanted you to do. Why are you not working with me? This was going to be really, really fun, and now it's all messed up. Okay, here we go. I'm telling you, every time I change something, the computer goes, well, I just want to do it my way. So here's the forecast. Tomorrow, that cold front barges in about between 8 and 10 a.m. A few showers possible. I really don't expect to see much, 20%, but that wind will be howling after that front. We'll warm up to around 60 degrees tomorrow morning, and then we will be dropping through the rest of the day. In the 40s behind the front, we'll be down to the mid-20s overnight. Just 41 degrees Monday. We stay breezy. Temperatures again in the mid-20s. Tuesday, Wednesday, really the same thing. That north wind hangs around. We stay cool in the low 40s. Wednesday, we may stay in the 30s, and temperatures, again, staying right around the mid-20s. Then the moisture comes in. So Thursday, at this point, looks like we will have the highest chance of precipitation. Thursday night. Friday looks like the models are starting to scoot this stuff out of here fairly quickly. That's the good news. Doesn't look like it's going to hang around too much. Wednesday, I will have to see. Some of the models are trying to put a little bit of moisture there, but it's really going to have to impress me, I think, before I put this back in the forecast for Wednesday because of how dry the air that is going to be around. So the main system arrives Thursday. I've got a 50% chance. I know that the National Weather Service said something earlier that has people interpreting it as a 60% chance, and they're saying there's a 2/3 chance this thing happens, and it was more wintry precipitation basically from our area north, and then there was a 1 in 3 chance of mostly just rain. I don't think that means a 60% chance overall. I think there's some muddying of the waters there. I'm saying 50%, and I think it's probably even less in the Metroplex, but the farther south you go, the closer you get to the core of that moisture. So I think 50% is fair for our area, and that could go up as we get closer. If we have more confidence getting closer, then hey, that could go up. But I have a 50% chance there, 20% Friday. Saturday, I think we're cleared out, and Saturday will be closer to 50 degrees, at least if this holds, and we could be above freezing overnight. By that point, we will have to wait and see. So the front arrives tomorrow, colder Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We're staying in the 40s. By next weekend, we're closer to the 50s here. I have the best chance of precipitation. Could be some rain, sleet, snow mix by the time we get to Thursday. Best chance of precipitation there. Overnight, you see 29 degrees. So with that moisture hanging around, with the clouds hanging overhead, that's going to help us maintain some of that daytime heating. So we won't get quite as cold. Could still have some bridges and overpasses and that kind of thing affected. And then we get into Friday, could be looking at a few straggling showers. Right now, though, looks like most of that's probably out of here Friday. So if anything, we may be adjusting that to just in the morning. And then Saturday looks decent here. So I want to make sure I've followed any questions here. And I think I've pretty well answered, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask those at this time. But I think I have answered every question that's come through so far. And yes, we do have, space open for advertising. So if you would like to jump in on that, just send an email over to kevin@southmetroweather.com and we can talk about that as well. But I think we're caught up on, the Venmo donations and things. I always appreciate it. Venmo, Cash App, that kind of stuff. And Austin, so what you're saying is we shouldn't go to work those days. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if you're going to have enough of a case to not go to work on those days. But there may be some places that just don't want to deal with it and tell you to stay home and that kind of thing, especially those places that they can handle you being remote. If you have the option to be remote, probably going to be a better idea on those days, on Thursday especially, because even if it's not treacherous out there, it's just going to be gross, right? It's not going to be ideal for driving around in that. And we've had a long road here. We've had a lot of hype. We've had a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion on this. And there's been Facebook pages that are telling you not to believe the hype, even though they're some of the worst offenders and all that good stuff. So it's been some virtue signaling and been some different things, different styles of handling this stuff. But we'll see what actually happens there. But I know for a fact that tomorrow there's going to be people who go to church in short sleeves and then walk out and they are wondering what in the world happened. Where did this crazy cold air come from? And again, tomorrow morning, I plan to be out and about, probably out following this front, out where we can experience this front together. And that's, again, it's a tradition that I do. I get out there, check out the front, check out that feeling of that first big push of cold air that moves through. So I think we've pretty well covered any of the questions here. We will continue to cover this for you, continue to monitor the timing on the front. That may be a little earlier by the time we get in the morning. I'll probably be waking up early to get that covered. And we will, of course, bring more updates to you as we get closer to Thursday and Friday on what to expect as winter weather arrives